Hey everyone! Have you ever felt like life played a mean trick on you? Picture this, a family fight over one small word. You'll want to hear what happens next. If you're as curious as I am, please like and drop a comment and don't subscribe to the YouTube channel for more revenge stories like this. Meet our main character, Madison. She's 31 years old now, but this story began when she was young. Over those 31 years, she learned big lessons about kindness and standing up for herself. In just a moment, you'll see how one simple no changed her life forever. Madison grew up in Silver Meadow Estates, a quiet place full of tall trees and friendly neighbors. Her mother, Linda, always worked hard. She wanted Madison to be perfect. At first, things seemed good. Madison had birthday parties with pink balloons and her favorite chocolate cake. She learned to ride her bike on sunny afternoons with her dad cheering her on. These were the highs, happy times when Madison laughed so loud that birds would flutter from the trees. But soon, little cracks began to form. Whenever Madison wanted to choose a different ice cream flavor than her mother picked, Linda frowned. When Madison asked to play with friends instead of doing extra chores, Linda's voice turned cold. A small chill crept into their home on Pine Tree Road. One day, 12-year-old Madison heard her mother whisper to a neighbor, "She's too stubborn. She knows best, but I run this house." That was Madison's first low. It felt like a cold wind blew right through her heart. She wondered if having her own thoughts was a crime. Madison tried to be good. She helped in the kitchen, did all her schoolwork, and even practiced piano for hours. But still, her mother seemed never happy enough. At 14, Madison saved $10 from her allowance to buy a gift for her mother's birthday. She chose a shiny silver locket with a tiny heart inside. When she gave it to Linda, her mother barely glanced at it and walked away to answer the phone. Madison felt hurt in a way she could not explain. That was another low. Her gift, her love, turned invisible. High moments came back when Madison reached 16. She joined the school play and played the kind fairy who helped everyone. When she took her bow at the end, the applause felt like sunshine. For a brief time, she believed she could fix anything with her smile. Her mother watched from the front row, but after the show, she only said, "Don't let that go to your head." Madison tried to hide her tears. She wondered if her small victory even mattered at home. As Madison finished high school, she dreamed of college and a life beyond Silver Meadow Estates. She studied hard, got scholarships, and moved to a city far away. She thought distance would heal the coldness between her and her mother. For a while it did. They talked on the phone, shared photos, and even laughed about old memories. But every call ended with Linda reminding Madison that she needed to visit more often, to choose the right career, to follow family rules. At 20, Madison had enough. She had her own small apartment, a job she loved, and friends who cared. Her mother called one evening and demanded that Madison change her major from art to business. When Madison calmly said no, that she would follow her heart, her mother's voice cracked. "How dare you disobey me?" Linda shrieked. "You think you know better than your mother? You are ungrateful." Madison felt her heart pound. She took a deep breath and said in a soft but firm voice, "I respect you, but this is my life. I choose art." Silence. Then Linda's next words hit like a hammer. "Fine. Get out of my house. You are not welcome here anymore." Madison's eyes widened. "Mom, I live on my own. This is the first time you've been this cruel." "That doesn't matter," Linda spat. "As long as you call me your mother, you obey me. One word of no and you're out." That was the extreme moment. Her mother kicked her out for saying no. Madison felt a rush of hurt, anger, and relief all at once. She packed a small bag, hugged her sleeping cat, and walked out into the dark night without looking back. The next day, Madison sat in her tiny apartment, tears on her cheeks, heart thumping. She realized something. Kindness should be given freely, not demanded. She decided that one day she would show her mother what it meant to be truly kind. But for now, she needed to heal. Life moved on. Madison found good friends who listened when she spoke. She found a mentor at work who taught her to stand tall. She painted every day, filling her apartment with color and hope. Months turned into years. The pain of that night lingered, but she used it to grow stronger. On her 21st birthday, Madison bought a small cake and wrote on it, "To freedom." She blew out the candle and made a wish that she would never let fear stop her from saying what she believed. Over the next few years, Madison learned to fly. She saved every extra dollar she could. By the time she was 25, she had enough to rent a small jet seat to visit a friend in another state. It felt like a dream to look down at the clouds, knowing she had paid with her own work. Each flight made her feel a little more powerful, a little more in charge of her own story. Lows still came. Sometimes she felt lonely at airports. Sometimes she missed her mother's voice. But she remembered that night when saying no cost her the only home she ever had. Saying no now felt like freedom, not fear. By the time Madison turned 30, her art career soared. Galleries in big cities showed her paintings. People who once ignored her now asked for her autograph. She knew she owed this to her own bravery. But in her heart, a tiny spot beat for something more, a chance to show her mother that kindness the way she believed it mattered. Now it's 11 years since that night her mother kicked her out. Madison stands on the tarmac in Silver Meadow Estates airport, looking up at a sleek, private jet with her name on its door. It's her jet now, her symbol of freedom and success. She takes a deep breath, steps forward, and reaches for the handle. Madison took her first step off the jet's metal stairs, and her heart pounded like a drum. She held her bag tight in one hand and the door frame in the other. In the bright morning sun, she saw her mother, Linda, standing by the runway fence. Linda's eyes were as wide as saucers. Her mouth hung open, and she looked more surprised than anyone Madison had ever seen. Madison swallowed hard. 11 years ago, saying one simple word, no, had sent her flying out of that same town. Now she was back, stepping down from a jet that had her name on it. She felt a mix of fear and triumph. Would her mother run away? Would she yell? Or would she stand there frozen? Linda's face turned pale. She stepped forward, her hands shaking. "Madison," she whispered, like she couldn't believe her ears. The wind blew Madison's hair into her face, and for a moment she wished she could turn away. But she didn't. She stood tall. "Yes, Mom." "It's me," Madison said, her voice soft but steady. Her boots clicked on the tarmac as she walked toward her. Around them, a few airport workers paused, staring at the two women who seemed so very different, and yet the same. When Madison was a little girl, she and her mother used to walk hand in hand down this very runway path, laughing and talking. Today there was no hand to hold. Madison felt a knot in her chest, but she also felt something new. Hope. Linda's eyes filled with tears. How did you get this jet?" she asked, her voice cracking. She reached out, as if she might touch Madison's arm, but then she hesitated. Madison smiled, a tiny smile. "I worked hard. I painted. People loved my art, and I saved every dollar until I could fly this way." Linda blinked again, like she was waking from a dream. "I'm so proud of you." Her voice was small, unsure. Madison noticed how Linda's shoes looked worn, how her jacket was too thin for the breeze. The proud Mother Madison had always wanted seemed to squint in the sunlight, unsure if it was safe to come back. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Madison held out her hand. "Come with me," she said. Linda took a shaky breath. She let Madison's hand slip into hers. They walked together toward the small airport cafe. Inside, the smell of fresh coffee and warm muffins wrapped around them like a hug. Madison found a corner table with 2 seats by the window. She sat down and patted the seat across from her. Linda sat, clutching her purse. Her eyes darted around, like she expected someone to shout, "Stop this!" But no one came. The cafe regulars sipped lattes and read newspapers, as if nothing strange had happened. A waitress brought 2 mugs of hot chocolate, Madison's favorite as a child, and a plate of blueberry muffins. Madison remembered how Linda used to bake muffins for her after big school tests. She took a muffin and broke it in half, offering 1 piece to her mother. Linda's lips trembled. She took the muffin and sniffed it. For a moment, she looked back to when Madison was small, sitting on the kitchen table with crumbs on her chin. Then she nodded, and the first small smile cracked across her face. She bit into the muffin. Madison felt her chest loosen. She sipped her hot chocolate. The sweetness of that first bite of muffin felt strange and wonderful. They talked in soft voices. Madison asked about her mother's life. How had she been since that night? Linda told her about lonely evenings, about the quiet house that felt too big without Madison's laughter. She said she regretted sending Madison away, but she also said she didn't know how to say sorry back then. Madison listened. She felt the hurt hum in her chest, but she remembered why she had come, to teach a lesson about kindness. She nodded at Linda's words, but did not speak of revenge. Not yet. After the muffins were gone, Madison reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped box. Linda looked surprised. Madison set it on the table. "I found this in my things last week," Madison said. "It's your old silver locket." She tapped the box. "I thought you might like to have it back." Linda's eyes fixed on the box. She unwrapped it slowly. Inside sat the tiny silver heart locket, its chain tangled bit. Linda's hand shook as she lifted it. Tears fell down her cheeks, and she whispered, "Thank you." Madison felt a warmth spread through her. This was a small kindness, she thought. It mattered. For the next hour, they shared stories. Madison told her mother about the airports she visited, the people she painted, the friends she made. Linda told Madison about the neighbors who had asked about her, the photo frames that sat empty on her living room shelves, the nights she lay awake wishing her daughter would walk back through the door. The conversation flowed easily like a gentle stream. Each word was a small step toward healing. Madison felt proud of herself. Proud she could be kind even when her heart ached. Then, just as the sun climbed higher in the sky, something unexpected happened. A voice boomed over the cafe's loudspeaker. "Attention, please. We have a special guest in our airport today. Veterans and children. Please make your way to Gate 3 for a surprise ceremony." Linda frowned. Madison looked too. What kind of ceremony? They stood and walked toward the gate. A small group of airport staff and passengers had gathered. In front stood a man in a suit holding a microphone. 2 children waved tiny flags. A banner read, "Welcome home, Major Johnson." Madison's heart froze. Major Johnson was Linda's late husband, Madison's father. He had passed away years ago in the line of duty. No one ever held a welcome home ceremony for him. Madison felt a cold drop of fear. What if this was a trick? The man in the suit tapped the microphone. "Today we honor Major Thomas Johnson, who served our country with courage. His daughter, Madison Johnson, is here with us. Madison, would you like to say a few words?" Madison stared at her mother. Linda looked crushed, tears streaming faster. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. The children looked up at Madison, waiting. The crowd quieted. Madison realized her mother did not know. No one had told her the ceremony was planned. They had not expected her to return. The next moment, Madison felt a powerful surge inside her, a chance to honor her father and to teach her mother the true meaning of kindness. Before she could move, though, the man in the suit leaned down and whispered something in Linda's ear. Linda's face went white. She clutched Madison's arm. Madison looked at her mother's eyes and saw shock deeper than anything before. And then it happened. Linda collapsed to her knees in front of everyone, sobbing, "No, no, no!" The children gasped. The man in the suit tried to help her up. Madison froze, unsure if she should rush forward or stay back. The crowd parted, whispering. Madison stood frozen as her mother, Linda, knelt on the tarmac, tears flowing like a sudden storm. The man in the suit bent down and whispered in Linda's ear, and Madison saw her mother's face turn ashen. Around them, people watched in stunned silence, unsure whether to step forward or step back. Madison's heart pounded. She remembered all the times her mother had dismissed her feelings, all the nights she'd cried alone in her room. But now here was a moment to show her mother what kindness truly meant and to claim a bit of her own power back. Finally, Linda rose to her feet, her knees wobbly. She looked at the man in the suit, then back at Madison, and took a deep breath as if bracing against a fierce wind. "Madison," she said, now very quiet. Madison blinked. Her mother had always had trouble saying her name gently. The crowd edged closer. Children shifted their flags. Madison glanced at the banner. "Welcome home, Major Johnson." Madison realized the man in the suit was airport manager Mr. Clark. He had organized this surprise ceremony for her father, Major Thomas Johnson, who had died in service when Madison was only 5. He showed photos of a smiling couple, Tom and Linda, standing in front of their first little home at Silver Meadow Estates. No one had ever celebrated Tom's return. Until now. Mr. Clark tapped the microphone. "Madison, would you like to say a few words?" Madison swallowed. She felt her mother's hand tremble on her arm. The crowd waited, expectant. She looked at her mother's eyes, red, tired, yet full of something like hope. Madison stepped forward. "Thank you," she began, her voice clear despite the butterflies in her belly. "My father was the kindest man I ever knew. He helped neighbors shovel snow, taught me how to ride a bike, and told me that kindness is the greatest strength." She paused, looking at the photos on the banner. A breeze fluttered the flags in the children's hands. "My mom and I," Madison continued, "we have had hard times. We drifted apart when I said I wanted to make my own choices. But today, seeing how much my dad meant to all of you, I want to say something important to my mom." Madison turned to Linda. "Mom, thank you for loving Dad. Thank you for teaching me to be strong. I forgive you for the nights you told me no. I forgive you for not seeing me." Linda's tears fell faster. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. The crowd murmured softly, touched by Madison's words. Madison took a deep breath. "Dad would want us to be kind to each other. He would want us to share our hearts." She reached out and Linda took her hand. They stood together, side by side as the crowd applauded. It was a high moment, a burst of warmth that wrapped around Madison's chest like a soft blanket. She felt proud, brave, and free. After the applause, people gathered around, offering hugs and congratulations. The children pressed forward to shake Madison's hand. Mr. Clark invited them all to release doves in Major Johnson's honor. Madison and Linda held the white birds together. The birds flapped their wings and soared into the blue sky, a fluttering promise of new beginnings. Once the ceremony ended, Madison and Linda walked back toward the little airport cafe, where the muffins and hot chocolate still smelled like comfort. But as they neared the entrance, a worrying sight stopped them cold. A group of strangers in dark suits standing outside, holding folders. One man carried a tall sign that read, "Notice of foreclosure auction." Madison's heart lurched. She remembered childhood days playing on the grassy lawn of their family home in Silver Meadow Estates. She remembered her father's gentle laughter and her mother's proud smile. But she also remembered the nights Linda cried alone, frightened by bills she couldn't pay. "Mom," Madison whispered, "what's this?" Linda's face drained of color. She recognized the sign. She turned to the man in the center of the group. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling. "What is this about?" The man in the suit cleared his throat. "Mrs. Johnson, the bank has not received mortgage payments for several months. "We're here to auction your home today at 3 o'clock." Time seemed to stop. Madison's eyes widened. She thought of the house where she had taken her first steps, the kitchen where she and her father had baked bread, the bedroom where she had cried after her mother kicked her out. That house was all Linda had left. A home built with love, but weakened by fear. Linda's knees buckled, and she clutched Madison's arm. "No," she gasped. "This can't be happening." Madison felt a surge of anger. Kindness had brought them to this moment, but revenge was still in her heart. She remembered every painful no, every moment her mother had closed her heart. Now her mother faced losing the home her father had built. Madison straightened. She looked the bank manager in the eye. "You can't do this today," she said firmly. "Not until 3 o'clock? That gives us time." The bank manager lifted an eyebrow but said nothing. Madison turned back to her mother. "Sit down," she said quietly, pointing to a bench by the cafe door. "We need a plan." Inside, cafe customers watched through the windows, curious. The 6 strangers in suits fanned out, some glancing at watches. Madison sat with Linda. She felt a chill despite the warm sun, but her heart burned with determination. She would use every bit of her courage and her success to save her mother's home. She thought of the jet she owned, the savings she had, and the kindness she still carried. Madison whispered her plan: call a lawyer friend, gather the documents, appeal to the bank head office. She would do everything she could. But even as she spoke, she spotted something in the banker's folder, a yellow envelope stamped urgent, final notice. There was no more time than they thought. Linda leaned into her daughter. Tears fell onto Madison's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Madison hugged her. "We'll fix this," she said. But just then, the airport intercom crackled on. A voice announced, "Attention all passengers. Due to security issues, we are closing the runway in 15 minutes. All private flights must depart immediately." Madison's breath caught. Their time was running out on 2 fronts, the auction and the flight schedule. If the runway closed, no one could land or take off, including her jet if she needed to move assets or bring in help. The wind picked up. The suits closed their folders and straightened their ties. The clock on the cafe wall ticked loudly. Madison stood, determination blazing in her eyes. She would fight, but first she needed to move her mother out of harm's way. As she extended her hand to Linda, another voice rang out over the intercom. "All vehicles on tarmac, clear the area now." A flash of metal sparked near the jet. Madison turned and saw a fueling truck approaching fast. Someone had sent it without warning, and it was spraying fuel near the plane. The driver looked frantic, as if he had lost control. Linda screamed. Madison lunged forward to catch her mother. The truck veered closer to the jet's wing. A sudden spark flew from the tarmac. In an instant, a small fire ignited at the base of the plane stairway. Madison's heart pounded as the little fire licked at the base of her jet stairs. Smoke curled around the wing, and the sweet smell of burning fuel filled the air. People screamed and ran back, away from the danger. The suits from the bank stood frozen, their foreclosure folders forgotten. Madison grabbed her mother's hand and yanked her back toward the cafe entrance. Inside, the windows rattled from the heat. A waitress shouted, "Fire alarm!" as she hit a button on the wall. Red lights flashed and a loud siren wailed. Madison felt her chest tighten. She knew that siren meant real danger, not just another drill. "Mom, stay close!" Madison shouted over the alarm. She led Linda toward the door at the back of the cafe, where a side hallway led toward the terminal building. Passengers rushed past them, shouting into phones or clutching luggage. Someone spilled their coffee, and a group of children buried their faces in each other's coats. Madison's mind raced. She needed to call the fire crew, check on the auction, and make sure her jet and her mother's home were safe. But first, She had to get Linda away from the fire. She held her mother's hand tight, feeling the warmth of Linda's trembling fingers. They reached a hallway door marked Staff Only, and Madison yanked it open. Inside was a small break room with a sink, chairs, and a first aid kit. She grabbed a wet towel from the sink and pressed it against Linda's mouth so she wouldn't inhale smoke. Linda coughed, but didn't panic. Madison braced her mother against the wall. "Breathe slowly," Madison told her. "Help is coming." Then she slipped out of the room, her shoes squeaking on the floor. She found an airport phone on a wall and picked it up. "Emergency? Fire at Gate 2. Private jet stairs on fire," she said to the dispatcher. "I know it's my jet, but you have to hurry." She gave her name and the location. In her ear, she heard the calm voice of the dispatcher say, "We're dispatching crews now. Evacuate the area and stay safe." Madison hung up and ran back to the break room. Smoke was thicker in the hallway now. She opened a window for fresh air and helped her mother lean closer to it. Outside, she saw bright red trucks speed onto the tarmac. Firefighters jumped out and rolled hoses toward the burning jet. A spray of water arced through the air and hit the flames. Water hissed on hot metal, sending up steam. The fire crews worked quickly, dousing the wing, the stairs, the engine cover. Madison watched, her heart in her throat. A firefighter signaled to her, "Is anyone still inside?" She shook her head. Slowly the flames died down. Black smoke drifted upward, but the worst was over. The fire crew kept spraying to cool the metal. Madison sighed, relief flooding her whole body. She hugged Linda hard, feeling her mother's tears dampen her hair. "You saved me," Linda whispered. "You saved me again." Madison's chest tightened. She thought of every time Linda had hurt her, every harsh word, every no. But now kindness had kept her safe. She nodded and held her mother close. They walked back toward the cafe entrance, where a dozen curious passengers and staff were gathering. The suits from the bank reassembled, smoothing their jackets and picking up their folders. The runway alarm still blared in the background. Madison looked at the bank manager. "Is the auction still on?" she asked. He flicked his eyes away. "Yes, the auction will begin at 3 o'clock, as scheduled." Madison checked her watch. It was 2:30. 30 minutes until her mother's home would be sold to the highest bidder. She swallowed hard. "Mom," she said, "we need to go to the courthouse." Linda nodded, her face pale but determined. "Let's go." Madison led her mother outside. The firefighters were packing up their hoses near the jet. One of them gave Madison a thumbs up. Madison managed a small smile and waved. Then she and Linda hurried toward the parking lot. In the car, Madison dialed her lawyer friend, Owen. He picked up on the first ring. "Owen, it's Madison," she said. "We need you at Jefferson County Courthouse in 30 minutes. Mother's house is up for auction." "I'm already on it," he said. "I'll fax the emergency stay order. I might need you to get a judge's signature on the spot." "Okay," Madison said. "Hurry." She hung up and looked at her mother. "We're going to stop this." They sped down the highway. Madison felt the wind through the open window, the sky above bright and clear like the future she wanted. She thought of her art shows, her jet, the cheers from strangers at the ceremony. She thought of her mother's tears of regret. And she thought of her father, Major Johnson, watching from somewhere beyond. At the courthouse steps, Owen met them, holding a stack of papers. He handed them to Madison, who unfolded them with trembling fingers. An emergency injunction to halt the auction, signed by a judge. Madison's heart leapt. She rushed inside and found the auctioneer in a small courtroom, setting up the gavel and seating bidders in folding chairs. "Stop!" Madison burst in, waving the papers. The auctioneer paused, his hand on the gavel. Bidders turned in their seats, murmuring. The bank manager glared at Madison, but said nothing. "This order halts the auction immediately," Madison said, her voice clear. She slid the papers across the table. The auctioneer read them, then looked at the judge sitting behind him. He nodded and lowered the gavel. The room sighed. Bidders stood and gathered their things. The bank manager frowned, flipping through the papers. Madison pulled her mother into a gentle hug. "We did it," she whispered. Linda's shoulders shook with relief. Tears fell down her cheeks. Once more, but these were tears of hope. Madison felt victorious. Kindness, courage, and her own hard work had saved her mother's home. She closed her eyes, imagining her father's proud face. But then the courtroom doors burst open, and a group of suited men rushed in behind a stern-looking woman in a black coat. She held up a different document, a sealed order marked Final Bank Approval, Release of Foreclosure Funds. The judge's eyes widened. He stood, clearing his throat. I cannot ignore this," he said, voice trembling. He tapped the gavel twice. "The injunction is invalid. The bank's final approval supersedes any temporary stays. The auction must proceed now." Madison's heart plummeted. She stepped forward, but the judge shook his head. The bank manager stood, a triumphant smile on his face. Below them, in the hallway, the sound of a clock ticking grew louder. It was 3 o'clock, and with that, the house would be sold no matter what. Madison looked at her mother's pale face. She opened her mouth to speak, but the auctioneer raised his gavel. He brought it down with a heavy thud, and in that instant the world seemed to tilt. The gavel strike echoed in Madison's ears, sealing her mother's fate and igniting a new, darker spark of revenge in Madison's heart. Madison felt her heart hammer in her chest as the auctioneer's gavel echoed. The courtroom seemed to spin. Her mother, Linda, stood beside her, pale and trembling. All at once, Madison knew she could not let the bank win. She would fight with every bit of her strength, and her kindness, too. Madison stepped forward, her voice calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wait," she said, holding up her hand. The auctioneer paused again, and the bidders turned to look. Linda held Madison's other hand, as if they were one person now. Madison looked at the judge. "Your Honor, please listen. My father, Major Thomas Johnson, set up a trust before he died. It says that our family home cannot be sold unless every family member agrees. I believe the bank did not check the trust properly. I have a copy right here." She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick envelope. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Show me," he said. Madison handed the envelope to the bailiff. The judge opened it and read the first page. His eyes widened. "This is valid," he said. "It bears your father's signature and a notary seal. If this trust is in force, the bank's foreclosure is void." The bank manager's face turned red. He stood up, paper rustling in his hands. "Your Honor, this trust has been filed, but the bank was never notified. The mortgage contract allowed us to proceed without checking it." The judge looked at Linda. "Is this your signature as witness?" he asked. Linda nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, I signed as his wife. He told me he wanted the house safe for our daughter." The judge tapped his gavel once. "Order in this court. The bank's foreclosure and auction are invalid. The trust prevents sale. Case dismissed." A hush fell. Then a wave of relief swept through the room. Bidders stood and murmured. The bank manager looked like he might burst. Madison felt a smile break across her face. She turned to her mother, who was crying softly. "Mom," Madison whispered, "we saved your home." Linda hugged her tightly. "My brave girl," she sobbed. "You did this." Outside the courtroom, they found Owen waiting with a big grin. He shook Madison's hand. "I told you we could do it," he said. Madison and Linda walked back to their inherited house. The sun was setting, painting the sky pink and gold. The front lawn was quiet, except for the wind rustling through tall oak trees. Madison remembered running here as a child, feet bare on the grass. She and Linda climbed the front steps together, side by side. Linda inserted her key and opened the door. Inside, the house looked the same. The living room with its old green sofa, the kitchen with the blue tiles her father picked out, the hallway with family photos on the walls. Madison saw her own baby picture on a shelf, her small hand reaching for her father's. Linda walked to the photo of Major Johnson in his uniform. She placed her hand on the frame. "Tom," she whispered, "we kept our promise." Madison went to the window and pulled aside the white lace curtain. Neighbors from Silver Meadow Estates were walking by, smiling and waving. They had heard the news. Some carried casseroles, others bouquets of flowers. Madison felt a warm glow. For the first time in years, she felt truly home. Linda came over, holding a small key. "There's one more thing," she said. She unlocked the bottom drawer of the antique side table. Inside was a small wooden box, carved with their family initials. She handed it to Madison. Madison opened it carefully. Inside lay a folded letter in her father's handwriting. Madison's breath caught. She unfolded the paper and read, "My dearest Madison, if you ever find this letter, know that I loved you more than anything. I set up this trust to protect our home and you, so no one could ever take away our memories. Always be kind, even when people have hurt you. Kindness is true strength. Love, Dad." Tears filled Madison's eyes. She looked at her mother, who was wiping her own tears. Madison held the letter close and then hugged Linda. "He was so smart," Madison said, "and so kind." Linda nodded. "He taught us both." They went into the kitchen. Madison found flour, sugar, eggs, and the blue mixing bowl her mother used long ago. Together, they baked a batch of chocolate chip cookies, just like they did when Madison was a little girl. The warm scent filled the house, wrapping them in a sweet comfort. As they waited for the cookies to bake, Linda picked up a paintbrush from the counter, covered in old green paint. "Do you remember painting the living room walls?" she asked. Madison laughed. "I dropped paint on the carpet." Linda smiled. "We cleaned it together." We laughed. Madison took the paintbrush and dipped it in a fresh can of white paint. "Shall we repaint together?" she asked. Linda nodded, tears and smile mixing on her face. Yes. They painted the living room walls white, brushing in slow strokes. Each stroke felt like a new beginning. When they finished, they stood back to admire the fresh brightness. The room felt warm and clear, full of hope. The cookies were ready. Madison and Linda sat at the kitchen table with 2 mugs of milk. They bit into the warm cookies, crumbs falling on their plates. The sweet taste made them both laugh. "Thank you, Madison," Linda said, looking at her daughter with love. "Thank you for saving our home and for teaching me to be kind." Madison smiled. "Thank you for listening, Mom. I'm proud of us." They finished their cookies and milk side by side. Outside, the last light of the sun flickered behind the trees. Silver Meadow Estates was quiet, peaceful. The house was safe, filled with memories and new dreams. As the evening grew darker, Madison and Linda turned on the lamps. Their shadows danced on the freshly painted walls. Madison held her father's letter close and sat on the sofa with her mother. They talked softly about art shows, about kindness, about the future. They laughed at old stories and planned new ones. In that moment, everything felt right. The house was theirs again, protected by love and a promise kept. Madison knew her father would be proud, and she knew that kindness, mixed with courage, had brought them home. Outside, the wind whispered through the oak trees, as if carrying Major Johnson's voice. Be kind, be brave, and always protect the ones you love. Madison smiled and closed her eyes, feeling warm inside. The long journey had ended at home, and a new chapter, full of kindness, art, and family, was just beginning.